We have a panel discussion today that's pretty much open. We're going to have questions, and I'm going to introduce the panelists to you, and we will start off with some questions. Also in your packet, there are some handouts from the panelists here that you can refer to. We can go over those later. Okay. The categories of our questions that we're going to discuss is going to be communication, relationships, surviving abuse, living with an addicted family member, and secession. So those are some of the topics that pretty much is prevalent around this time of in our lives and that's going on right now. So our panelists are in position, and I'll introduce our panelists for you. Our first one is Latina Jolivet. Latina is a detective victim assistance coordinator with the City of New Orleans Police Department. Drive and dedication helped Officer Latina Jolivet earn her bachelor's degree and her master's degree while serving her city. She is a licensed master social worker and a small business owner. She has experience in crisis intervention, domestic violence, and facilitating services for families who experience grief and trauma. She specializes in trauma, post-traumatic stress disorders, grief counseling, and domestic violence. Latina Jolivet. Our next panelist is Darlene Magruder-Poole. Darlene graduated from Southern University in New Orleans with a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice and Substance Abuse. She developed and co-founded Generations Health Incorporated, a nonprofit changing generation one youth at a time, and where well-being is at the forefront of what they are working for to help build individuals to function at their best potential. Having been torn down by life experiences, Darlene experienced the perseverance to overcome life's setbacks through her faith in God and herself. Her favorite quote, "Tell me I can't, and I'll show you I can." She wants everyone to know that she is living on purpose, trying her best to live for God and do what's pleasing in His sight. Amen. Our next panelist is Dottie. Our next panelist is Dorothy Dottie Reese. Dottie was named the 2014 New Orleans Top Female Achiever as Chairman of the Board of the Urban League of Greater New Orleans. She relocated from Los Angeles to New Orleans to join her husband, a Crescent City native, where she received a master's in public health and a master's in social work from Tulane University. When Katrina hit, Dottie took that opportunity to make a change. Together with Margaret Montgomery Richard, they formed their own organizational development and project management firm, DMM and Associates, LLC. Her advice for women: if you absolutely believe in yourself and your dream, stick with it. It's about hard work, networking, and recognizing that you need to be open to wise counsel that will come your way. Dottie is a member of St. Raymond and St. Leo, where she and her husband judge current reservist lectures. Our next panelist, Terrence Dugas. Terrence is a former attorney with the Social Security Administration and a former assistant district attorney. She currently works as an attorney with the Department of Children and Family Services Child Support Enforcement Division. She has a general private practice practicing personal injury law. Her hidden entrepreneurial passion is in real estate investment. In her spare time, she is learning how to play the drums. Terrence is a member of St. Raymond and St. Leo the Great, where she sings in the choir. Terrence Dugas. Our next panelist is Angela Shiloh Cryer. Angela is a master and registered social worker, where she oversees the coordination and administration of all aspects of Strive NOLA program. Strive NOLA is a foundational skills program that assists individuals with acquiring the life-changing skills and attitudes needed to overcome challenging circumstances, find sustained employment, and become valuable contributors to their families, their employers, and their communities. Angela is a member of St. Raymond and St. Leo the Great, where she serves as a Eucharistic minister and on the parish council. Angela Shiloh Cryer. As you can tell, we have a very diverse group here, and they're very knowledgeable, so if you have any questions, this is the time to get some free consultations. Okay, first question I want to start off with is, what is the most important skill a person can have? Okay, communication. Okay, so that's one of the first things. If we can't communicate, then we can't get anything started. All right? So, for our panel, know their backgrounds. What are some of the questions that you would like to, anyone would like to ask, starting off?
What is the key? Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
What skills do you need to effectively communicate? Because I swear, sometimes I feel like my husband heard blue and I said black. I'm like, so what's the skill? What skill do you need to communicate effectively?
I'll take that one, then we'll pass it. In order to really have effective communication with others, it is really important that you listen and that you hear what someone else is trying to understand. And oftentimes, in conversation, somebody will say, well, that person they didn't understand what I was saying. But then whose responsibility is that? That is your responsibility to ensure that people can understand in a very thoughtful way, process what it is that you're trying to communicate to them. And if you are really interested in trying to establish a relationship with someone, then the first key is to be open to hear and understand what it is that they're trying to communicate to you.
So the thing that I would add to that is that we listen to understand. Because a lot of times when someone is speaking to us, we are thinking about what it is that we want to say next, as opposed to really, really listening to what that individual has to say and trying to process, allowing ourselves the time to process what they're saying, and then even verifying by saying, okay, so what I heard you say was, just to make sure, and if you didn't get it correct, they'll tell you. Right. So that might be something that's helpful as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Also, as it relates to communication, what I would like to add is being respectful to the individual that you're communicating with, because a lot of times when we're communicating and disrespect is going on, it doesn't allow the person to hear or to be open to even hear what you have to say, and empathizing as well. Communicating, putting yourself in the other person's shoes to understand what it is that, that they're saying that you may or may not agree with. So empathy as well as respect.
I do want to add one additional point relative to communication is the recognition of generational differences and cultural. I was in the faculty of Cornell University and their diversity, equity, and inclusion program, and I taught many years. And actually, I'm getting ready to start on Thomas Jefferson and University in Philadelphia on this certificate program in cultural competency. And so when you recognize the differences relative to generation, as well as cultural, and of course, the economic, educational background around communication. And oftentimes, we'll make judgments about people and how they communicate without recognizing all of those other factors, and that people are going to communicate with you through their own lens. And you're going to receive those messages through your own lens. And that's how oftentimes miscommunication can occur, because we are sending and receiving from a different perspective, but just taking a few moments to recognize that, and then you can make those self-modifications and then be able to effectively communicate with others.
I can say this, as an attorney, all we do is talk. But what we do sometimes is talk over each other because we're so eager to get our point across. So, is that better? Yeah. So, it's important to sometimes just listen, because your opposition may be making your argument for you. They're exposing their hand. So sometimes just, listen, I'm sorry. Right there. Let's see if we get feedback from here. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So,
It's normal to speaker. You can't be close to the speaker. That's correct.
Miss Cynthia, can you turn the mic off in your hand? That might work.
It's off. It's off. I turned it off. I turned this off. So try this.
testing. This is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm doing
So yeah. Sister Cynthia. Yeah. So it's just a matter of being respectful and listening, and sometimes when we listen, we're actually learning. So,
Thank you.
So I think that we communicate very differently now than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So now with social media and with texting and all those things, is that we're learning a whole different way how to communicate with our children and our grandchildren. What I don't like about texting sometimes is that it can be miscommunicated. That we say something, but the other person receives it in a different way. And I'm the kind of person with my children, I want to hear you. So I want to hear what you're saying, so I can respond back to you, because sometimes when you say something, I know something else is going on. And so I think that when we have children and grandchildren, when they come to the table and all they want to do is text, then that's our time to say, we're going to sit here and have a dialogue without any telephones. And that's hard, but I think it's really needed in order for us to make sure we teach our children effective communication skills and social skills too.
Okay, you got a question?
Yes. Okay. She got a big mouth. That's right.
Okay, so mine's a succession question. I come from a relatively large family. My grandparents had 8 children. My grandfather died in 2004, and my grandmother died in 2010. They did not open succession in 2004. My grandfather died. They did not open succession in 2010 when my grandmother died. Now my parents' generation, and this is a little selfish because I'm the oldest grandchild, and I'm about to see this fall on me. They are not interested in open succession, and we own property. They own property, and there's inheritance there. What can I do, or how do I handle this?
okay, well, your question actually tells why it's extremely important to write a will.
Yes.
What your grandparents did was just really made it extremely complicated for the next generations. And honestly, you're gonna have to do it very methodically. You start with the first person who died, and then you have to go up, which is gonna be extremely costly for y'all. Yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is not a really comfortable topic to talk about, but it's extremely necessary. And I kind of feel, well, first of all, if you listen to my bio, successions and estate planning, those are not my disciplines. But I'm so glad that Sister Cynthia asked me to speak about it, because I feel like, wow, I'm not even on my game. I need to handle my business. I have a will, but it hasn't even been updated for 10 years. When in the course of 10 years, some of the people who I donate or bequeath property to have now just passed. Or I don't even like them anymore. Simple as that.
is I'm going to, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about this uncomfortable issue and let you know why it's important to have a will. You're going to have to talk to an attorney because you can't do it on your own. It's a little bit messy. Okay? So, yeah, and especially if there are a lot of children and grandchildren, a lot of descendants. But anyway, you know, people think that estate planning is for wealthy or, you know, people who have children or, you know, they just think that it's this big word, estate planning. But really, the thing about it is an estate is anything. If you own a car, if you have a bank account, that's an estate. And we all want to know, you know, at least we should plan for who is going to handle our estate or get what we plan to leave behind. If you don't do a will, there are laws in place that will dictate who's going to get what you leave. And those in the law may be totally contradictory to what you really had, your intentions. So get a will, do it. And it's simple. I've given a packet to everybody. It's a checklist. So when you go to your attorney's office, if you want to get a will done, there's a checklist. I think it's the first page. It will spill your entire life out. There are things that you probably don't even know you should have or include as part of your estate. So we're not going to go through that now, but when you go home today, because after I finish, you're going to want to go home and write a will, actually. Okay? So go there and answer the questions and, you know, do the best you can. But it's going to give you peace of mind and knowing that what you have is going to the right people. And also be less of a hassle for your heirs or successors. Okay, the first thing is I'm sorry.
But no question. Some of us don't have the handout, but
You don't have I can give you mine. I have one. I'll give it to you.
Yes, you probably got a folder that didn't have one in there, but we're going to look for it. Okay. And before you leave, just check at the registration tape, and we'll have it.
Okay, the first thing you should do right now, and we know this from Katrina, you need to gather all of your important documents. That would be your deeds, birth certificates, marriage certificates, any contact information, such as your lawyers, your doctors. You need to get it together and put it in a safe place. And don't do like me, put it on the first floor of your house where the flood waters can get to it. You know, put it in a safe place where you can easily ascertain it. Also, the second thing you need to do is execute your last will and testament. You can do this one of two ways. You can do it statutorily, meaning that you can go to an attorney and have it notarized and witnessed by two individuals. Or, and I'm going to tell you a little secret, you can do an holographic will, which is something that you can handwrite. But you must make sure that each page is handwritten. And when I say handwritten, I mean handwritten, not typed. Because if you type it, it will not be a valid will. It has to be handwritten, dated, and signed. Each page, handwritten, dated, and signed. And that's a valid will. Once someone says, well, yeah, I recognize the signature, then the judge is going to say, well, it's valid. So you can go home today and actually write a will using that checklist that I've provided. Again, if you don't do a will, the law is going to tell you who your stuff is going to go to. Okay, here's another one. You can also do a living will or an advance directive. Now this is kind of a little eerie because what that's doing is like telling people right now what you want to happen if you suddenly become incapacitated. If you can't communicate for yourself and you're on life support, what's your intentions? Do you want to continue to stay on life support, or would you want your family to do as you wish? Okay, so those things include life support, feeding tubes, anything that you have no control over if you're not of sound mind. So another thing is to have in place a power of attorney. And if I'm going on too long, please stop me because I know we have other panelists, but I can go really quickly. Do a power of attorney. This is something that you should do now while you're doing your will. Put a power of attorney in place because that's going to help you while you're alive. The will kicks into place when you're dead. But right now, while you're alive and you become incapacitated, you can give someone the authority to take care of your medical needs, but not only that, your financial needs. If someone needs to go to your bank and withdraw money, pay your bills. My father has Parkinson's. I tried to call Sewage and Water Board to contest his water bill. And I was told that because I didn't have power of attorney on file, they couldn't even give me information. A water bill. So if I couldn't get information about his water bill, just think if I wanted to get information about his health. Right. So it would be extremely difficult for me to do without a power of attorney. So I've actually included in your packet a sample power of attorney, so you can read it and see, who you can actually get as a trusted person. You can name as someone who's going to handle that for you. Also, you can establish a living trust. Now, I'm an attorney, and I didn't even know about this, but I'm going to do a little bit more research, but I can share with you what I know. Right now, while you're alive, you can take your possessions and put them in trust. Does anybody have water? Thank you.
And I'm gonna make copies of the packet, and I'll have them tomorrow.
We have a question. I have experienced some of the things that you have said. I've had 3 husbands, and the last husband, he felt that he did not have to make a will, a succession. So when he died, I had to pray for his wife's succession, then his succession, in order to get what he left me. Okay, so you must do that. I don't have much, but I will my house. Every husband I've had, I made wills. I made a will.
Right on.
I'm not looking for the. This is my question. I made my will. I had power of attorney. I did all of that. But is it necessary to make a living will? Because I told my cousin, he had power of attorney. If I don't want no machine to be on me if I'm dead. That's the hospital's making money. Do I need that living will?
No, I think you've made it very clear that you do not. But here's the thing, if that's in your will is not going to be, nobody's going to know what's in your will until you're gone. So you need to do the power of attorney, do a living will. And did you say that's in your power of attorney?
I had all of that done, the power of attorney and the will, but I did not do a living will.
Do a living will. Do a living will.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
That way you know you're not going to be on the
But I had all of that.
My question is, if you have a trust, does your survivors still have to open succession? Or does a trust supersede that succession?
It's different. Those are 2 different animals. Absolutely.
That's what I need to know. What's the difference?
Those are 2 different animals. You can have a trust and you can have your will.
So you still have to open succession?
Absolutely. Now with the trust, with whatever's in trust, because sometimes you can open a trust and accumulate assets after you've done that. Okay. But whatever's in trust, and that's the beauty of a trust, you have control of it. While you're alive, you can do anything you want with it, and when you die, the person who you appoint as the successor, they can distribute it any way they see fit. And that's an advantage because you can kind of bypass all the legal probate business, and if you do an irrevocable trust, it can even protect you from creditors. Yeah, so, yeah, so the will would come into play with other assets that was not included in the trust. Okay, so do you guys want me to let another panelist talk, or would you like me to finish telling you the things?
Okay, Yeah, I think we have, that was a lot of information. That could take up an entire session on the legal aspect of it. So I think you guys have gotten some good free advice that you don't have to pay $150, $200 an hour for. And the forms in your packet, and like I said, Cynthia said she'll have more for you tomorrow.
That packet is a gift. Go through it. I'm serious.
Okay. So I think one of the other topics we want to touch on is about relationships. And that ties into communications. Because as Cynthia was saying, blue and black has two different colors. So you got to know what you're talking about when you speak with someone. So in this day and age that Angela talked about, social media. If someone doesn't share passwords to their email, social media accounts, or phone, can you trust them?
No. Yes.
Let's discuss that. Anybody have any questions along those lines? I mean, we've had people that.
You don't want to share your password.
Do you all want us to answer that?
I have a real quick question in reference to texting. I was told by my son that when you capitalize within your texting, that you're yelling. Okay.
Sometimes that's all you can text in the capital letter.
All right. To go back to the question. To go back to the question that you asked about trust, that really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the relationship. I mean, if you have a very suspect relationship, then you have a reason to want to know if somebody's keeping something from you. But relationships really are about boundaries and negotiating. And when I say negotiating, it's like when you go into a relationship with someone, you decide up front basically how it's going to be. An example of that is like, a lot of young women, I've been married a very, very long time. And a lot of young brides will say, it's like, what do you do? What's the key to this? Well, part of that discussion about negotiation, are you going to be the one who's going to cook every single day? You talk about that before you get married. Are you going to work? You staying home? Who's doing the laundry? So basically, you are negotiating those things. So when it comes to texting and passwords and mail, you really negotiate that. In old school relationships, everybody opened the mail when it came. You just opened. I mean, it was no big deal. So in a relationship like that, if you carry it over to today's world of communicating with email and stuff, it's very normal, it's very natural, and it's not even about trust, it's something you do. However, with young people today, it's not a question of somebody's keeping secrets, it's just the world they live in. I mean, they're raised to have passwords, they're raised to communicate as an individual and not as a whole household. So you have to think in terms of, if there's a reason why you should be suspect, as Oprah Winfrey said, you don't get privacy. If you're doing something that you shouldn't do and somebody is trying to figure out what it is that you're doing that's going to impact their life, you don't have privacy. But if all the stakes are on the table, everybody understands what's going on, then there's no reason not to believe that just because somebody doesn't want to share information with you that they're hiding something.
I don't really have a question, but I just kind of agree with you with the negotiation. I think if your relationship begins with a climate of transparency, then it shouldn't be an issue. If your relationship's built on something else, and negotiations are, I'm comfortable with this, I'm not comfortable with that, then, and you are honest about it, then you kind of open the door that what comes with not full transparency. If you're not
Absolutely.
I have a question, even though I'm supposed to be passing the mic. This is for anyone. How do you keep your relationship with God strong throughout, whether it's career, relationship, whatever, like without getting lost in the sauce of all that stuff.
Okay, and I guess I want to answer that. I know for me, I've been married, it'll be 18 years in February, and the majority of the marriage, my husband, he suffered with an addiction. But it goes back to what you said as far as making time, making sure that you put it in the schedule. Like I find myself now recently just starting a nonprofit, it gets busy with meetings, networking, events, and I have family, I have husband, children. It's about making time, making sure like in the morning, that's what I do. I have to include God, because at the end of the day, that's commanding my whole day. Making sure that I meditate and read the inspiration that I need to go throughout the day, and ending the day as well. And again, sometimes you get so busy what you do, you don't do it, so you have to really make yourself, because at the end of the day can be chaotic. But with him, it can make it the rough patches kind of smooth. It can really help. I've had those days where I didn't do it, and it's like everything is going on, and you feel the wrath of everything going on. But those days when everything are going on, it's like he's really protecting you from all the chaos. So you have to make time. You have to make time for God, because if you forget Him, I mean, that's it. It's like the rest of your day, your life, not just career, family, everything is off balance. He balances, everything. So you have to really make yourself, do it.
Any other questions?
So I just want to say that I took care of my parents for 6 years, and I also took care of a husband who was mentally ill. And I was grounded because of God and my spirituality. Because there were many days I got in my car and I cried. And I said, God, why am I going through this? You know what He told me? Why not? Why not? So we all have to get through to have a test to the testimony. So I'm just like this young lady. I was married 32 years. And so what happened was I had to go to Him every day through the middle of the night to get me through my parents and dealing with somebody who had mental illness.
When we talk about relationships, another thing that happens in relationships, not only communications, in this day and age, we're hearing a lot about domestic violence, trafficking, and things like that. So, Latina, can you speak on that, since I think you're an expert in that area?
Okay, so as it relates to domestic violence is one of those things that actually involves power and control. It's at the center. Can you hear me? Okay. Power and control is at the center of domestic violence, okay? It's something that happens suddenly, right? It's something that, you could have been in a relationship for a long time, or marriage for a long time, and at some point, for whatever reason, somebody feel the need to hit another person, right? And then they're the person that mostly is the person that actually has the control, because they actually has the financial person, they're a person that pay the bills and things like that. And when it initially happens, a person, and I would say female because most victims are female. The female may feel that, this is a one-time thing, it just kind of happened, right? But then over time, it's a cycle. It comes back. So there's a honeymoon period, is what they call it, right? And then after that, it just constantly happens and happens. It kind of spirals out of control. And that is like a basic as it relates to domestic violence. But the thing that I want to submit to you is romantic competence. And what romantic competence is, it's an insight. It starts off with insight. Insight is an awareness. And basically it's an understanding of yourself, but also understanding of your partner. Okay? Then it involves mutuality. Okay? Having an understanding that both people have needs and what those needs are, but being able to effectively communicate what those needs are and how you understand what your relationship is. So then the other thing is emotional regulation. How do I feel about what's happening? And are you able to freely express that? There may be a situation where you're not. So understanding as it relates to relationships that it's two parties, right? And everybody who's involved, the person who's involved, the two people who are involved, should have the freedom to express how it is that they feel about the situation, about the relationship. In the event that you're not, because that's where the conflict happens, that you're not able to express what it is that you're feeling, or like it could be out of the situation where it starts off with just name calling. Or, I don't like that shirt, don't wear it. Or don't wear that dress. It's subtle. And then it starts off that way, then it kind of spirals out of control. So some of the things you can be aware of if it's a situation where it's a new relationship, how does that person treat their parents, their mother, their sister, the waitress, when you go out to dinner, right? Could be something like that. Or, you notice this attitude that come up and, it really didn't warrant. It's like a situation that happened where it was a simple conversation that you guys were having, and all of a sudden you said this one thing, and you kind of got them upset. Little things like that. So you have to just kind of watch these patterns that happen. Especially if it generally, in a normal circumstances, it wouldn't necessarily get a person that upset. You have to kind of watch those patterns and those behaviors of individuals. And then you start to kind of learn that person after a while. And for the most part, you have to be honest with yourself about what it is that you want and what it is that you're willing to accept. So that's one of the things that I would say as it relates to domestic violence. And romantic competence is a whole lot that's involved in it. And I kind of summed it up really quick, but that's just one thing that you can be aware of as it relates to domestic violence.
I want to touch on that quickly. As far as being educated and being aware, because I know myself, again, I've been married, it'll be 18 years, and pretty much the entire time my husband abused heroin. And the thing about it is, I didn't realize that I was a victim of abuse. He never put his hands on me. He never verbally, insulted me or anything like that, but it was the mental abuse emotional abuse, the mental abuse that I experienced dealing with that. Because, when you look at someone that's physically hitting you, like, of course, the manipulation, when someone suffers with addiction, they manipulate and they know what to say to get you to do what it is that they want you to do, or to, if they go get help and, then they come back, or if they're getting help for you just so that you can take them back in, and then, the lies, and it's just everything that goes on with addiction that can mentally, or emotionally, take you to, another place. So it's important to, be aware, because sometimes people feel like if you're not getting, physically, touched, that it's not abuse, but there's so many forms of abuse. And so I guess just being aware and educated and understanding the different, ways that you can be abused, and making sure that you're not in denial and getting help.
Question? You got one right here.
Well, okay, she asked me did I get help. I did get help. I had, of course, counseling. And I've learned that when someone is addicted, I know for my husband, a lot of times it was like, not telling people, the situation that you're going through, wanting you to be quiet, wanting to keep you to yourself. And that was the part that it's about letting someone know, sharing with someone so that you can get help. And so for me, I'm gonna be honest, it got to the point that I went through, so I was tired of talking about it to other people, because I said the same thing over and over again. So it's to the point where really God, when they say when you don't have anyone, he'll never leave you nor forsake you. He was the one that got me through it, because I didn't want to tell anybody anymore, because after so long, for so many years, I'm saying the same thing. I got tired of telling people. So it was me and God. And God was the one that, pushed me through. He kept me, he held me. When I fell, he picked me up, because there were times, even going through that, where I wanted to kill myself, because it was just that, again, mental, because I'm not understanding addiction. I'm not understanding what's going on. It's a substance. How are you not able to not use? But again, I had to educate myself and learn about addiction, because again, I had in college, substance abuse was part of the concentration, but that didn't teach, I'm gonna be honest, that didn't teach me. Life experience taught me, living with an addict for almost 18 years, that's what taught me about addiction. I educated myself. I wanted to know what is going, like, why is this happening? What's going on? And again, that's what helped, but God, that's all I can say, God.
In 2014, I started noticing some behaviors in my husband who had been
Is it on?
I started noticing behaviors in my husband that was not the person who I married. So he was a police officer for almost 30 years, and he retired at age 52. And so at first it started with some put downs and emotional and mental abuse. Fat. I've been fat all my life. You know that, you married me when I was fat. I don't get it now. And so it started with that. And then it started with the physical in 2014. And I didn't understand it at all. Here I am, Angela Shallow Crier, a professional, that it was a secret. And I kept the secret to me. My family didn't know, my church family didn't know, my children didn't know. And it got worse and worse. And so 4 days after I had buried my daddy, Reginald went into a rage and beat me to the point where I had a concussion. Kept me in the house for 5 days. Took my phone. And God, I said, God, if you let me out of here, I will never come back. So God helped me devise a plan to get out there. I said, oh, you're not gonna go take care of some stuff with my parents. They both died, we gotta do some stuff. And he said, okay. And when I walked out that door on April 4th, 2017, I never went back. Because when I got out, I just felt a sense of something through my body that said, you can make this. That's right. And so there I did go through the thing and telling my children, telling my church family, telling my family. And everybody said, we never knew. No, because we wear a mask. Right. And I was embarrassed and I was ashamed. Here I am, I'm educated. I can't fix the man. And I'm a social worker. But I realized that at one point, he was unfixable. Because you have some post-traumatic stress going on from Katrina. And you got some bipolar issues. When I fix your breakfast and you just throw it at me. Yeah. And so I also realized that I was loving him more than I was loving him.
We have a question. Thank you for that. I just wanted to ask kind of a follow-up question. Can people hear me? Yes. Okay. When you spoke about, what was that, romantic competence or something like that? Okay. So, coming from an abusive relationship from my previous husband and now entering into a new relationship, my to-be husband, how do I, as a survivor, just a person who has come from an experience that, let me see how I can word this, can probably make me be more suspicious, just constantly on guard of things, and maybe not needing to be that way. And I'm wanting this relationship to be a wonderful, communicative, uplifting, positive relationship, absolutely. And so I know that there's just a difference between woman speak and man speak sometimes, just in general. And so how to manage a new relationship without that jadedness from a previous bad experience, and being open with communication and that maybe that romantic competence kind of, I don't know, like needing maybe having a third party present to make sure that you're having thoughtful conversations on making sure that each person feels comfortable in expressing their love and bond with each other in a way that's beneficial for both parties. I don't know. Yeah, letting your guard down. Hey, here you go. That's so easy. Thank you.
So one of the things I would say is that one of the things that's important is being honest about what it is that you want, and being able to say what it is that you want. A lot of times we can say what it is that we don't want, but we don't, very rarely able to say, if somebody asks you right now, what is it that you want? What is it? Know what it is that you want. You have to be able to know that for yourself to be able to communicate that to your partner. So being honest. A lot of times we spend so much time trying to get somebody to see us in a certain way. But is that who we really are? You have to learn who you are first. Your authentic self, whoever that may be, good, bad, and ugly. If you know who that is, then you can be honest. You can let your guard down because you're not trying to pretend. Sharing who you are honestly with your mate, that's the best thing that you could possibly do because you're giving your honesty. You're sharing that. This is who I am. I don't like this, or I like that. But being honest with that part. And I was just gonna say, it's not easy at all for us to come forward, for women to come forward and say, this is what happened to me. So I have to commend these ladies for even sharing their story. One thing that's most important, every time we talk about domestic violence, there is someone here who have went through it, who is currently going through it. And if you are, there are ways that you can actually get help. There are people who do sincerely care about you and about you getting out. And then you will be able to tell your story. First of all, it is embarrassing. And it doesn't matter who you are, professional or not, job or not, it doesn't matter who you are. And as Ms. Angela shared, it happened, but it happened after a life change, a retirement. So life changes, that is part of that awareness. Being aware about, you know what, things have shifted now. I noticed that this is the way it was in the beginning, but now things have changed. So being able to, that awareness is important, that awareness is key, and being honest with the way that things are and where you are, and it'll be able to help you move forward. But there are places, and there are people who care. I'm sure you're aware of the Family Justice Center. That's a one-stop shop for domestic violence victims. That's a place. But also, it's important that we, as police officers, I'm a police sergeant now, thank you. Always trying to impress upon the officers is to be patient. To be patient with the person that's coming forward, because guess what? 7 times at least it takes for a woman to leave that situation. And they go back for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, that's not our role, to judge why they were there, why they stayed. We're just there to support them, and that's what they need, your friends, your family, who may be going through it. They need your support. And once you support them through that, when they decide to leave that last time, it's the most dangerous time for them. So you have to be aware and support them during that time as well.
In your packet, I have a handout for you on 20 tips for having a healthy relationship. And to your point about going into your new relationship and you met a really wonderful person, and I think it's really important that you take some time. And one of the tips, let me back. One of the tips I put on here was basically like Michelle Obama said. Sometimes you have to go in for a tune-up. You got to get some help, some counseling. Doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, but because you value yourself and your relationship that much, that you want to make sure that you have dealt with all of the baggage that you carry, and it is natural, it is normal that you would have some. And it would be a good idea for you to consider going to talk to someone before you enter into your marriage, your next marriage, because there could very well be some instances where if you have not dealt with certain issues, you may think something's coming and it's not. And that could be very harmful to your new relationship, because if you have a man that's coming with transparency and honesty and love, he will be very confused by some of the dynamics that you're going to bring into the relationship. You will be very aware on a very conscious level that this is what you don't want to do, but on an unconscious level, we oftentimes repeat those patterns, and it could be very unhealthy for your new healthy relationship that you've entered into.
One more question.
Well, it's not really a question, it's just a statement, or a request. What I have is not necessarily a question, it's a request to the older generation that's in the room. I'm going to request of you, if you are a survivor of abuse, please share this with the next generation. Not just the female members, but the male members of your family. Because the male members, if you're their grandmother, they respect you. And if they know you're a survivor, they will not carry that on as they grow up. Share it with all your members. You have no reason to be ashamed. Pride yourself in being a survivor. They need to know. Too often the older generation hold things in. Whether you're a survivor of abuse, health situation, and the next generation does not know how to address it. And then they become ashamed. I've never experienced any of this, but I'm just appealing to you all in here. Please share your survival story with the younger generation so they know that there is hope as females, hope as males, because males are abused, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual. Share it with the males so that they know I wouldn't want this to happen to a female in my family, therefore I will respect the fact that this woman or man that I'm in a relationship with is someone else's child, and I need to respect them as well. Thank y'all so much for sharing your experience and your survival story.
Okay, we have one question in the back. We have a few more minutes.
Hi, as a pseudo member of the older generation, when I was a younger person, the elders told us to get an education and work hard and save money and love your children. And that would be all we needed to do when we came up and we had an African-American president. And now I have no idea what's going on in this country. And I listen to the news and I'm gratified that the number of people who are being murdered every year in New Orleans has decreased. But I am disturbed by hearing of other crimes. Folks who we thought were not touchable, young women with babies are being mugged and robbed and hurt when we would say, well, they wouldn't go this far. But I think the they are our children. So I'm just curious about what you think about trauma. Is that affecting our children? And I'm gonna call them my children because they look like me. But I don't want to be trauma. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want anybody in here to be a victim. But I don't see, it seems to be getting worse, not any better. And I'm thinking places like this where it's safe, we talk and our hearts touch each other, and I wonder how many times the folks that are having difficulties had that happen. I don't know what y'all would, if you care to comment on that statement. Thank you.
And let me make sure, you're saying that as far as the children experiencing the trauma with the...
whatever it is.
Okay, well, I know I can speak from experience, okay, with my son as far as my son experiencing, because my husband started using actually 1 week after we got married. And so my son, he was born into, so basically my son is now 17. Then his entire 17 years, he experienced his father in and out. 1 minute dad is there, the next minute dad is not there. Then again, in the beginning, when I didn't really know what was going on, I didn't really know how to process it or handle it. So I would get, very furious with my husband when he did use, and so I would be the one to, I would get physical with him. And so a lot of times my son, again, I was young, in my 20s, my son, he was actually afraid to even certain things just to be a child. He didn't want to go outside and play because he wanted to make sure that, mom and dad wasn't going to get into it. Or, when I would put my husband out the house because I felt, he had to go, the behavior was just getting, as far as stealing, all the time, taking things. I'm working hard. I was pretty much the one always working. And so my son, when I would put my husband out, I would just put him out, didn't care. My son, he would be there crying and different things. And so again, my son experienced this back and forth, really almost his entire 17 years of life. But when he was in 4th grade, he started displaying a behavior of, of throwing desks and just being upset. And a lot of people were like, no, not, Will, he's not doing that. But I've learned now, of course, throughout the years that he was basically acting out his feelings. And he was acting out those feelings based on life and what he experienced as far as the trauma of dealing with, mom and dad, and mom not knowing how to really deal with someone that's suffering with addiction. And, he would just be angry all the time. But again, the school would just consider it a behavioral problem. He's behaving, he's misbehaving. But them not really knowing and understanding what it is this child has been going through, pretty much his entire life. And so to answer that question, the children do experience trauma and they do, act out in ways that a lot of times people don't understand. Like even when you have children that might be verbalized cursing, a teacher or someone out, a lot of times people look at this child as, oh, he's bad, but not realizing this child might be getting abused every day at home, sexually, physically, and so that's just that child's way of dealing with the trauma. They don't really know how to deal with it, so instead of talking about it, saying, look, this is what I'm going through, they seem angry, and they seem mad, they seem disrespectful. And so it's just, again, about educating yourself on that. But yes, the children do definitely, the trauma affects them in a way, and it's about getting them help as well. Everybody has to get help. Everybody, the person, the abuser, the victim, and the family. Everybody has to get help because it's about, again, the generational cycle. So you have to fix everything. It's like you can't, you can't fix the arm, right, and the leg in order for the body to operate, at its best function. So again, everybody has to heal. Everybody has to get help.
Amen. Thank you, ladies. I just want to make sure we're on schedule. It's 2 o'clock and we're supposed to end, but if you guys do we need to go over, I don't want to do some wrap-ups or we don't want to keep you guys here any longer. We're good? Okay. Terrence, you have something to say? No? Okay. We have any more questions? Angela,
just one more thing.
we got one question.
No, not a question, but a compliment to congratulate all of our panelists. And Angela, Kai, Shala, you are just the bravest, most beautiful, loving. But you have all been wonderful, very excellent, and very informative, so we thank you.
Thank you. But all the thing has been with the grace of God, that's what I have to say. But the last thing I want to say is advocating for stronger laws for men who abuse women or women abuse men. Because the laws are not strong enough. Right. So my husband did all of that, he was arrested, he got inactive probation. Inactive probation is that you have to see the probation officer. That's some foolishness, right? And a fine of $1,000, which was nothing to him. And then he had to be arrested again because I went one day, he was in my car, came around my job, arrested again, in jail for 7 weeks. Last week, Wednesday, he came around the house again. Oh my God. So it's like when you deal with mental illness, So yes, you're in jail, but they're not dealing with your mental illness. So we have to advocate for strong mental health issues for people, or advocacy, but also the strong laws that protect women and children.
I have a question. Going forward, is there any advice that you guys can give us as women for the generational gap that we have from the ages of like 25 to 35, when you are a young parent, and I'm sure we all know that that's what a part of our crisis that we're facing is that we have grandmothers now that's like 35, 36, 37, 38. So now you're kind of losing some of the origins of being a mother or a grandmother to the fact that it's now coming in a younger generation. So how do we bridge the gap to that? Because that's what I feel right now is our angle to try to reach the younger people, is because technically, even myself, I could be a grandmother right now, but I'm technically under 40 and still haven't experienced life myself. So how do we, or what do we have in place to bridge that generational gap that grandkids get what they really need from a grandmother wisdom standpoint? Or, you know, it's like growing up, I knew I had to go to the rosary. I knew I had to go to church. It was law in our house because I had older people that made it law, whereas to now you have a younger generation who's making it an option. Like, do you want to go to church, or you're coming to church? So what do we have, or what can we put in place to bridge that gap in age?
That's all there. I just want, I'm gonna say quickly, I'm gonna just say quickly. The thing about it is, it's about you setting the standards. Like, you set the standards, you do it. It doesn't matter if anybody else is doing it, you do it. Because in my house, again, I'm 39, my son, you're gonna go to church. You know what Sunday is, I need you to get your clothes together the night before. You're going to church. I don't care what the neighbors are doing, you're gonna do it. So you set the standards for your home.
Well, I mean, as a whole, I mean, like, if that person is not a very recipient of the church, I'm talking about the women of the church.
Encourage.
What can we place? Like, if you have a younger generation, then we need to grab them. We need to take hold of them. I'm not saying.
Okay, coming together, so, right, so basically the village, basically a village effect.
What is a village of older women, what can we put in place, or what advice you can give to us to reach out to that younger generation, to put that, like a church should come.
Right, okay, I got what you're saying. Just encouraging, my thing, okay, encouraging them, showing love, you know, letting them feel comfortable to where they can, you know, feel like they can come to you, but encouraging that generation to just do what it is that, you know, we saw when we were growing up. And so that would be my best advice, encouraging them to make sure that they do it, continue it. We don't have to stop it, we can encourage them to continue doing it.
Looks like we've had some very good topics, it's a very good open discussion. Okay. But we're running out of time, so I don't want to hold anybody.
I don't need to, like, I just wanted to address it. As a village, all could bring that child
to church. We are the village. Oh, my neighbor, you can't go? I'll take your child with me. Invite them, bring them, give them a ride.
Yes, thank you.
Last word.
And you all, thank you for the invitation to participate today. This has just been amazing. You know, and I just want to reiterate one of the things about healthy relationships. You know, there's a handout in the brochure on 20 tips for having a healthy relationship. People define relationships very differently, but I think it's very, very important that we really focus on having the healthy piece of a relationship. And that means the relationship that you're having not only with your mate or your spouse, but your siblings, with your parents, with your co-workers, with your best friends, with your church members. You know, how do you encourage and nourish those? Because we all need to understand what it is that we need to do as individuals to continually strengthen those relationships and make sure that, that we have the love that we're looking for. So thank you all very, very much.
Find joy in your life and cherish every moment, because in the end, it's the journey that really matters.
Amen.